Coming up on Phillies Nation, presented by BQ Basement Systems, Pat and Corey recap the Phillies draft and how it affects the minor league system. Natalie is back with Matt Stairs for part 2 of a 3-part series. Tommy Green joins us on the mound, and I've got the batter's inbox questions. That's all ahead on Phillies Nation.
Welcome in. It is Phillies Nation presented by BQ Basement Systems. He is Corey Simon. I'm Pat Gallen. We are here once again at Shibe Vintage Sports, 13th and Walnut in Center City, Philadelphia. Well, finally, it happened. Ken Giles brought up by the Philadelphia Phillies after storming through Reading, pitching well at AAA Lehigh Valley. He is now with the Philadelphia Phillies, and the numbers pretty decent. At Reading, 13 games, a 1.20 ERA, 29 strikeouts, and just 5 walks. Then he goes to AAA. 11 games, not as good, a 2.63 ERA, but he had these quotes to say the other day. He said, "I know what I can do, and I'm going to show them what I can do. I'm not perfect, I'm not a complete project yet, but I'm only going to get better with experience." He's here. Enjoy it.
Well, it's very intriguing to see a young guy coming up here. I think the two guys that Phillies fans want to see most in 2014 are Ken Giles and Maikel Franco. So it's good to see Giles up in June, a little bit earlier than expected. And it may surprise some people that he did come up because at AAA, he wasn't as effective. He had 9 strikeouts and 8 walks in 13 innings. So the move to AAA was to get him against more experienced hitters, and against those more experienced hitters, he wasn't throwing strikes, which might forecast some pretty poor numbers at the major league level. However, Ken Giles, the fact that he can throw 95 to 100 miles per hour, he should be a pretty decent setup man moving forward as long as he can command his fastball. What we saw is that this was need-based. Mike Adams went down, he went to the DL, Phillies insert Ken Giles. Phillies fans have been clamoring for him for months, and last week when the Phillies needed some bullpen help after those marathon Mets games, they turned to Felipe Almonte and Cesar Jimenez, and nobody understood why. Well, the reason was the Phillies didn't need a setup man. They didn't need a savior there. All they needed was some arms to help the tired relievers in the pen. Now they're looking for a setup man, and that looks like it might be Ken Giles' role from the right side.
And it's kind of a shame that they will not have Mike Adams, it seems like, for the foreseeable future, because he came back off the DL with a vengeance. The number's great. It's his 4th DL stint, however, but 2 years, $12 million contract. He was living up to that at least now. 17 innings, a 2.12 ERA, struck out 20 and walked just 7. That wasn't that bad, but they're not going to have him for a little while.
This is a disaster for the Phillies, straight up. This is a disastrous injury because Mike Adams, I was having this conversation with some people at Comcast Sportsnet earlier in the week. Mike Adams was probably the most realistically tradable asset on the Phillies, who have a lot of them, but teams always need bullpen help at the trade deadline. Mike Adams has not allowed an earned run in 14 consecutive appearances when he hit the DL. He's a guy who has a lengthy track record, but he also has a lengthy recent injury history. He had thoracic outlet syndrome surgery in October 2012. Right, in October 2012. Last summer had shoulder surgery. Now hits the DL with shoulder inflammation. That is definitely going to give some teams pause with a 35-year-old who has a lot of bullets on that shoulder, and I just wonder if he's even tradable anymore. And I was looking back at last deadline. There were a couple of relievers like Mike Adams who were dealt. Scott Downs was one. The Angels got a former first-round pick, Corey Rasmus, for him. The Tigers traded for Jose Veras, the Astros late-inning reliever, and they gave up 2 pretty intriguing prospects for him. So for a while, it looked like Mike Adams might be tradable, not so much anymore.
All right, so it doesn't look like they're going to get any prospects from Matt Adams, but let's look at Mike Adams, Let's look at the prospects the Phillies do have, and a couple that they just picked up in the draft, and one being their first-round pick, 7th overall. That's Aaron Nola out of LSU. He's not that bad, 91 to 94 on the fastball. He's got a good sink. He's got a good changeup, power curve. Looks like he could be in the major leagues pretty soon. How soon?
Well, it's funny because like every single scout and analyst is saying that Aaron Nola is going to be the first draft pick from this draft to reach the majors. And when you have everybody saying one thing, it never turns out that way. But you see a lot of Mike Leake comparisons. I think Nola has better stuff than him, a better breaking ball, more miles per hour on his fastball. But the Phillies needed to do this. They needed to go for a somewhat sure thing after just a decade of going for these high-upside high school players, most of which have not panned out. Looking at you, Larry Green, Anthony Hewitt, Greg Golson, just a series of failed draft picks in the first round. It looks like this one, according to all reports, should live up to the hype.
Yeah, and they definitely changed their tune as far as drafts are concerned. 9 college players in the first 10 picks. Well, a guy that is headed to a major league team, he was just drafted 164th overall by the Boston Red Sox, is local product Josh Ockamy out of Newman Goretti in South Philadelphia. Our own Rudy Mezzi caught up with him.
The easiest thing for a kid growing up in Philly is probably to play basketball, maybe football. There's courts everywhere. All you need is a ball. There's always pickup games going on. Baseball, obviously, it's different.
For most kids, that would be enough to sway you towards the hardwood or gridiron, but not Josh Ockamy. The 6'4", 220-pound senior from Newman Goretti picked up a bat when he was 5 years old, and he hasn't stopped improving since.
You're never ever good enough. Baseball is a frustrating sport. It's tough to play a game where you go 3 for 10 and you're considered good. Like those other 7 outs, you just had to smile, because you always had to take everything positive out of it.
Positivity isn't all Ockamy is getting out of the game. He'll also be taking a full baseball scholarship to Indiana University this fall. That is, unless a Major League Baseball team can change his mind.
If you sign, you're good. You go right into professional baseball in the minor leagues. But if he doesn't sign and he goes to Indiana, which is a 4-year school, he'll have to either wait till he's 21 years old or till after his junior year. So it'll be a tough decision.
Whether it's Indiana or the MLB draft, Josh does not know where his life will take him in the next 2 weeks. One thing he does know is that no one will ever wear the number 30 at Newman Goretti again.
It was kind of no-brainer. Myself and the other coaches in our administration sat down and said, hey, we got probably the best player in Newman history. We don't think anybody should ever wear number 30 again. And everybody said, absolutely, so we retired his number on senior day. And that's the kind of impact that he'll have. He'll be remembered forever.
All dreams have to start somewhere. For Josh, one of his biggest dreams is to get right back to the place he started.
It would be like the Mike Trout thing, where 10,000 people from Millville came out. Ever since day one, you watch Phillies games, you watch all the sports, it's like, hey, I really like this game. Well, you already started, might as well make it your goal to play Major League Baseball.
Making your city proud is one thing, but when your city just happens to be the city of brotherly love, nothing is more important than the people who made it possible for you to dream.
I know he comes from a tremendous family. They clearly have brought him up the right way, so I know they've been a big impact on his success.
We only have one car right now, and between 5 people living in the house, it's kind of tough. They deserve the best because they gave their all to me. So I had to at least give something to them.
Unfortunately, Josh was not drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies, so he won't be coming home, but he is going to a pretty good organization in the Boston Red Sox. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. It is Phillies Nation.
Natural.
Did you feel like it was magic that year? When I think back to that year, everything just seemed to flow and everything was just perfect. It almost seemed like magic. Like, do you think a lot of that had to do with the bond between the players and how the locker room got along?
100%. I came here very late in the season, walked in and open arms. People probably thought, who was this guy? We're bringing in. And even though I had a good career, it was, I could just tell, and Pat Burrell and all the guys were just true leaders, and they had fun up till 7:07 or 7:10, whatever time the first pitch was, and then the game face was on. And as soon as the game was over, we had fun. And it was just a team that we clicked. Everywhere we went, it was as a team. If you went out for lunch, there was probably 10, 12 guys. After the game, if you went for a couple of pops, there was a lot of guys. The chemistry was unbelievable, and I was really impressed with Pat Burrell when I got here, because he stepped aside when he didn't play.
Yeah.
He didn't care.
Right.
He wanted the guy who'd go out there and help the team win, and that's what you need. Guys who are supporting. Look, Pat Burrell. Yeah. People will never forget him here, and he steps aside and lets people step in front of him to play, and we accepted it. And that's the biggest thing that whole year, is that everyone accepted their role.
Who am I?
Babe Ruth.
So now that you're here, what do you like to do in the city?
I've only had a few days off since I've been here, because I've been going to the ballpark for home games and watching and learning and listening to T-Mac, Murph, and Jamie. I just, I'll go down to the local bar and watch a hockey game.
Excellent stuff there from Natalie and Matt Stairs, part 2 of a 3-part series. Now we go to our favorite. It's by the numbers, and Corey's got some great stuff on our Philadelphia Phillies. What do you have?
If it seems like Chase Utley hasn't cooled off all season, it's because he hasn't. In fact, he's one of just 4 players in the major leagues who has not gone consecutive starts without getting a hit. There are only 4 players in baseball who haven't been held hitless in consecutive starts: Chase Utley, Yasiel Puig, Melky Cabrera, and Matt Adams of the Cardinals, who's currently on the DL. That's pretty incredible.
That is pretty incredible.
That's remarkable consistency from Utley this year.
Absolutely is. What else you got on Cole Hamels? He owns the Reds.
Last week against the Reds, just another dominant outing by Hamels, who in his career, including playoffs, is 10-0 against the Reds with a 1.36 ERA. I can't imagine there's anybody in baseball, any pitcher in baseball, who has better numbers against one team with a minimum of 10 starts than Hamels. And it's kind of surprising because the Reds over that period of time have been a pretty good hitting team with Joey Votto and Jay Bruce and Brandon Phillips and the like. So very surprising to see Hamels just every single time out dominate the Reds without exception.
All right, let's try to help you out and your fantasy team. It is our fantasy baseball segment, and it's brought to you by DraftStreet.com. The future of fantasy sports. Visit DraftStreet.com. Use the promo code PhilliesNation for a free one-day fantasy league where you can win real cash prizes. I told you last week, finally got one right. Mike Napoli, I told you to pick him up. He got off the DL and hit a home run in his first game back with the Red Sox. Probably not a starter in most leagues, but if you want to use him as a backup, maybe a utility guy, you could do far worse than Mike Napoli. Who'd you pick last?
I picked Adam Lind, who's actually still playing pretty well for the Blue Jays, getting on base a lot, driving in some runs.
How about this week? Who do you have?
I have Danny Duffy, the Kansas City Royals starting pitcher. He's available in a lot of leagues because early in the season, despite his success, he wasn't going deep into games, a lot of 5-inning outings. But last week, 12 innings, 3 runs allowed, strikes a lot of batters out. He's a guy who always had a ton of upside and potential for the Royals. A lot of their pitching prospects flamed out. He's one who hasn't.
I'm going to go with Kendrys Morales, however you want to put it. He signed with the Minnesota Twins, a 1-year, $12 million contract. And again, he's just a backup, but in deeper leagues, if you need that sort of utility guy, he's going to hit for a pretty good average. He gets on base at a pretty decent clip. Not a ton of power left with Kendrys Morales. I don't think he's a 35 home run guy or anything like that, but again, you could do far worse at your utility position. That's it for fantasy baseball. It's, of course, brought to you by DraftStreet.com. It is the future of fantasy sports. We are coming right back here on Phillies Nation.
Welcome back to Phillies Nation. I'm Ryan Williams here with Pat and Corey, and it's time for our Batters Inbox questions, where the guys debate your question and I'll pick the winner. Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
All right, let's go. Our first question asks, do you worry about Cole Hamels throwing 125 pitches or more 3 times already this season? Corey?
I do, and the reason I do is because this is rapidly looking like a lost season for the Phillies, and Cole Hamels is one of their most prized assets. Signing a $144 million extension last July, you don't want to see Cole Hamels wear himself out or get hurt, especially based on the fact that he had some shoulder troubles this past offseason. You don't want to see him get hurt in a season that's rapidly looking like a lost season, coming off back-to-back 125 pitch outings. And look, that is a byproduct of going deep into games, missing a lot of bats, getting a lot of foul balls. But if I'm Ryan Sandberg, moving forward, I'm going to be pretty cautious with Cole Hamels.
I'd say you're right about that. Moving forward, it would be a problem if they continue to go this route with Cole Hamels and going plus 120, 125. But to this point, no, because what's the alternative? You know what the alternative is. It's a bullpen that's blown several games so far this season. And look, to this point, they still believe that they're in it because it's a long season. They still got a long way to go. So they're thinking, okay, we'll throw them out there 125 pitches, we'll save the bullpen, we don't have to go that route, that's fine. But again, as you said, if they continue to go this route, then it becomes a problem because he is coming off the arm issues. But look, he's a big-time pitcher. He can deal with this sort of stress. I think he's okay. I think it's fine. So it's not a problem for me.
Gonna have to go with Corey on this one. Sorry, Pat.
All right, fine.
Our next question, if you could redo one move Ruben Amaro has made, what would it be? Pat?
In his entire tenure, I think it's a group of moves, and they all kind of fall into the same category. Brandon Moss, who we've heard a lot about recently with the Oakland A's, is an MVP candidate. Ryan Vogelsong with the San Francisco Giants, and Jason Grilli with the Pittsburgh Pirates. All 3 of those guys were with the Phillies at one time. They were all in the minor leagues. They didn't give any of them a chance to break through at the major league level, and that's a problem because the Phillies really haven't been able to show that they can find these diamonds in the rough. Guys like this that I know Brandon Moss wasn't going to get a ton of time at the major league level, but as a backup, if he showed you he can come off the bench and hit a few home runs, that to me is the bigger factor in all of this than the bigger named guys like Chase Utley and Cole Hamels. Yeah, they've been able to find these guys and make big trades, but it's the smaller moves that have killed them, like the Moss, Vogelsong, and Grilli moves.
Brandon Moss, a lot like Jason Worth, finally putting it all together in his late 20s after being a highly touted prospect coming up. To me, the easy move would be saying the Cliff Lee move in December of 2009, trading him to Seattle, getting very little in return. I'm picking the whole entire Hunter Pence ordeal because the Phillies pretty much bought high on Hunter Pence and then a year later sold low. They traded off Domingo Santana and Jared Cozart and Jonathan Singleton. They gave up their best hitting prospect and their best pitching prospect to get Pence. And then all they got a year later when he was hitting .250, they got Tommy Joseph, Nate Schierholtz, and Seth Rosine, one of which is no longer with the organization. Tommy Joseph still hasn't panned out. So really what the Phillies have done is they've traded away a lot of prospects, some of which are panning out, and the ones they've brought back to replenish the farm system, none of them have worked out.
Well, I'm going to have to go with Corey back-to-back
Wins
for it.
already? All right.
Our last question. In both the NL and AL, who would you choose for your Cy Young winners to be this season if it ended today?
If it ended today, I'm going to go with Adam Wainwright in the National League, Chris Sale in the American League. Wainwright is the ultimate professional. He's the ultimate ace, and he's the reason why the Cardinals are still playing at a high level, and he's ridiculous. Chris Sale, only 7 starts this season, but he's 5-0, and he's got a whip under .7. That's ridiculous. Sale and Wainwright.
Those are two great selections. I can't really fault you on the Sale one, especially he was hurt for a little bit. I think that will impact maybe some of the voting. But I have King Felix Hernandez in the AL because knock on Felix Hernandez was always he didn't have the wins. You know, people really overvalue wins. This year he does. He's 8-1 with a .259 ERA, struck out a career high 15 batters this past Sunday. In the National League, I'm going Madison Bumgarner, the Giants lefty. He's been absolutely terrific for the last 6 weeks. He's anchoring a staff that is really underproduced. The Giants have the best record in the NL, and that's without Tim Lincecum and Matt Cain pitching well at all. So Bumgarner's the anchor to that staff, and they're the best team in the NL. I think it has to be Bumgarner in the NL.
I agree with you, but I'm give
I think she's
one.
just going to give me that point. Yeah, I'm satisfied now.
All right, well, there you go. That wraps up our Batters in Box questions for this week. If you want to hear what Pat and Corey have to say, leave them for us on our Facebook and Twitter page. Don't touch that remote. We'll be right back with more Phillies news.
Hi, I'm Tommy Green. Today we're going to talk about a little bit is conditioning for a pitcher to go 9 innings. It's a good subject because people are caught up on different things with pitch counts and different things, but my thought when I played was I'm conditioning myself preseason, before spring training, during spring training to build myself up so I could throw enough and I can go 9 innings. Starting with core work, leg work, stamina, being able to physically withstand the heat at, so to speak, the old Veterans Stadium on that turf, which was 155, 60 degrees on a Sunday afternoon. Be able to go throw 120 or 30 pitches, if that's what it's called for. And that all comes down to your preseason work and your in-season work, running, weights and stuff, your training with your trainers. It's huge to be on a consistent routine during the season and during the winter to keep yourself the best you can, because that's what they have to do these days. You can't take a lot of time off anymore or you lose your job.
Thank you, Tommy. Tommy Green, obviously part of Philadelphia Phillies history. And now we turn to the National Museum of American Jewish History. They have an exhibit open now until October 26th. Our own Becca Hendrickson takes a look.
Chasing Dreams was over 2 years in the making.
And in those 2 years, the National Museum of American Jewish History on 5th and Market Streets gathered 130 original artifacts from vendors and historians from all over the world to show how baseball played a role in American integration.
Baseball has really served as both a mirror and a beacon for America.
It was a melting pot early on when Italian and Irish immigrants came into this country and immediately were accepted into baseball in the 19th century. To Jackie Robinson being well ahead of Brown versus Board of Education.
And it's also shown the way for us, especially in the area of civil rights, where baseball really led the way.
The highlight of the exhibit, Jackie Robinson's jacket, complete with his name inscribed in the sleeve, which you have to come to the museum to see.
The moment it all came together for me was when Jackie Robinson's jacket arrived at the museum. And we were really able to see how we were telling a story that went beyond boundaries of faith or race and tell stories that are universal.
It's a chance to hear a global perspective of America's pastime through different versions of baseball's national anthem, discussions of the game, both past and present.
It was just a beautiful, beautiful afternoon where everything worked.
And through interactive ways like catching a virtual fly ball from some of baseball's best.
Wow! Nice fielding!
This is a game that brings people of all ages together, And on Father's Day, the museum is open for free, with a special screening of Field of Dreams outside on Independence Mall.
To have an exhibit in Philadelphia related to baseball and Judaism is great partnership in terms of providing a cultural outlet beyond the ballpark for fans of the game.
This exhibition has something that speaks to everyone. It's not just about stats and figures and who played in the All-Star game in what year. We're the only museum in America that's dedicated to telling the national story of American history through the lens of the Jewish experience. And it makes perfect sense that we would tell that story through the lens of baseball as we do in Chasing Dreams.
Apart from all the history upstairs, there's one thing you have to try before you leave. You can come downstairs and put on a Sandy Koufax jersey and take a pitch from the mound just like he did in the majors. For Phillies Nation, I'm Becca Hendrickson.
Thank you, Becca. Sounds like more people will be showing up to see that exhibit than they are Phillies games these days. And take a look at this graphic. The attendance has dropped over the past few years, and if you've been out to the park, you realize it. In their peak, they were getting over 45,000 in 2010 and 2011, but this year down to just over 30,000, and that's just tickets sold. The number of people actually going to the park is far less, but they are having a problem getting people out to the ballpark right now.
In terms of percentage of capacity at Citizens Bank Park that's filled, the Phillies were first all those years that they were great. Last year dropped to 5th, this year 12th. And the home field advantage at CBP is just completely gone. Teams don't fear coming in here. The Phillies are 7 or so games under 500 at home. It's been a major problem. And you know, you're not going to be a contending team if you can't win games at home, period.
You're absolutely correct about that.
Real quick, one other thing that sticks out to me at home is that the Phillies have been severely out-homered at home. These other teams are still coming in and making
Park too.
These other teams are still coming in and making Citizens Bank Park look small. The Phillies are not doing it.
Absolutely right. Let's go to our Twitter trivia, hashtag PNTrivia at Phillies Nation. Last week, the question was, and it pertained to Carlos Ruiz and his .403 on-base percentage since 2004. That's the last 10 seasons. Which Philly had the highest on-base percentage in a single season? You know who it was?
I do now. It's Bobby Abreu, right?
It was Bobby Abreu. .428 in 2004. We longed for those days. This week's trivia question is this. So at their peak in 2011, the Phillies, they played quick games all the time. That's no longer the case. So in the first 50 games back in 2011, they played 11 games in under 2.5 hours. That's ridiculous. This year, I want you to tell me how many times the Phillies have played a game in under 2.5 hours.
Is this a trick question? Have they even done it this year? I mean, that makes you long for the days where the Phillies pitchers could actually throw strikes. This year, it's a staff filled with guys who nibble.
You tell us. Hashtag PNTrivia at Phillies Nation. That's it for us. Thank yous all around to everyone, 2020 behind the camera, Brian Michael, to Matt Stairs, to Natalie, to Tommy Green, to everyone involved in this show. He's Corey Seidman. I'm Pat Gallen. Thanks for joining us here on Phillies Nation. We'll see you next time.